What is up, Commander fans? It's Justin Parnell here to rank every single legendary creature that appears in Brothers War, including all of those that are in the Brothers War Commander decks. Now, it's 2022, so you know that means there's an outrageous amount of legendary creatures, so I think there's like 30 that we're going to rank all the way from 30 to 1. And in this set, which is actually kind of rare, there are legendary creatures that have multiple versions. And there's 2 legendary creatures, Urza and Mishra, that have like 4 different versions. So let's see if the math is in either of their favors, and if either Urza or Mishra can come out number 1 for the Brothers War. But before we get to ranking every single legendary creature in Brothers War, I just want to ask you to take a few seconds to hit that like and subscribe button. That will really help the channel grow and make sure you can keep seeing Magic the Gathering content in your inbox every week. Number 30, Hajar, Loyal Bodyguard. Look, something's got to be the worst, right? Something's got to come in 30th, and Hajar, while a very cool looking card, he's badass, he's brandishing like 2 molten swords, clearly has both eyes towards 60 card constructed formats. Hajar is what I would call a deck building exercise, because ultimately the Legends only restriction is going to be a lot for Hajar to overcome, and to make a splash as a commander, he's going to need a host of other cheap red and green legendary creatures to do so that like to attack, and that's pretty much it. So I think we can probably do better elsewhere. Number 29, Mishra, Excavation Prodigy. Mishra's uncommon doesn't measure up to his brother Urza's uncommon, which is obvious because, you know, Mishra's ranked pretty low and Urza's not. And potentially, maybe that's the reason that the Brothers War started in the first place, because Mishra kind of got the short end of the stick in a lot of areas. Honestly, I think this card is a terrible commander. And normally, I'm going to give some extra points for being a lower rarity, because, you know, something like an uncommon, you can play in a different format, maybe like Peasant or Artisan Commander. But even still, Mishra is pretty terrible. The double red turn is really silly because it only triggers once, and it's going to be almost impossible to take advantage of in the way that your commander would need to be successful. Seriously, this card just sucks as a commander. Just use Duretti instead. Number 28, Feldon, Ronom, Excavator. Much like his predecessor, Feldon does give you card advantage. I like that. Unlike his predecessor, you have to work a little harder to even unlock it in the first place, and then spend even more resources to use it. Red has no shortage of little pings to make Feldon start exiling cards for you to play, but there are more options where the juice is worth the squeeze, especially with the standard leaning can't block line that's on Feldon. I'm not saying you can't bend over backwards to make Feldon do something. I just hope you're under the age of 30, because after that, people really aren't supposed to bend that way as much anymore. Feldon's fine, much better in the 99 rather than leading the charge in the command zone. Number 27, Loran, Disciple of History. Loran is a little slow going as a general value engine for a normal commander, needing multiple other legends to help you get back artifacts, which is the only thing she lets you return to your hand. Looking at it from the lens of being an uncommon, well, Loran still kind of suffers. It's about the same, since the cards you would need to trigger Loran get more expensive as they go down in rarity, not the other way around. I think you just need more in the command zone to justify playing a card like this. Number 26, Loran of the Third Path. Now, this version of Loran is an exciting card, but a really boring commander. The single enter the battlefield is really awesome for white as a card, and I expect her to be a mainstay in the 99 of many, many white decks. And it might be a little annoying for there to be a disenchant waiting in someone's command zone to ruin the day of another player, but the tap ability is really where she's more interesting. It's not huge on the impact scale, but it can definitely play as a nice peace offering to encourage politics and accrue some needed mono white card advantage. Maybe Loran would be interesting to pair with some other mutual white card draw to go fully in on the alliance making. Number 25, Ashnod Flesh Mechanist. It can be tough for 1-mana legends to make enough of an impact in the command zone, but points to the Red Woman for making a valiant attempt. I think Ashnod is a little too demanding with your creature resources to give such a small bonus once a turn at best. And though the concept of turning your dead creatures into new zombies is something to do with those Powerstones she's going to be making, she's not going to be able to measure up to her significantly more powerful counterpart we'll see later on this list. Number 24, Gwenna, Eyes of Gaea. Gwenna is uniquely not suited to be much of a commander. If that's the direction you go with, you'll be able to produce 2 mana of any colors in your mono green deck, which is not great. But the reason Gwenna isn't at the bottom of this list is the second triggered ability. The 5 power or greater lines returns from the Shards of Alara block and actually gives a fun deck building direction, and Gwenna can provide a 2 mana discount on each huge monster you cast. It's easy enough to draw cards to keep your hand full in green, so that's not going to be a problem. My main gripe with this card is Gwenna should have been at least 2 of the Naya colors. Limiting the second ability to just green feels like an oversight that could have made for a much cooler commander had she not been mono green. Number 23, Sanwell Avenging Ace. Sanwell is, well, fine. They do provide some card advantage, they can rumble in combat, but it very rarely is going to be the legend for the job if you're looking for aggression plus selective card advantage. The key to Sanwell is listed in their creature type of pilot, as they really want you to be finding vehicles and crewing Sanwell to do the tap ability. I question where Sanwell is worth it leading the charge and providing a single color of mana in the command zone. I much prefer Sanwell in the 99 rather than leading the deck. Number 22, Tawnos Solemn Survivor. Other than the fact that Tawnos looks like Billy Bob Thornton if he had married Laura Dern instead of Angelina Jolie, Tawnos is pretty slow. Value-based Esper commander who needs multiple tap abilities to happen to really make an impact on the game. That means the first and most important pairing with Tawnos is something that untaps creatures like Thousand Year Elixir, which I'm also sure that Billy Bob Thornton would be scared of since it looks like antique furniture. Yep, you can look that one up. I never like needing a specific card for a deck to function at a high level, so I'm not too excited about this version of Tawnos. Number 21, Liberator, Urza's Battlethopter. Is a legendary Shimmer Mirror good? Probably. It probably is. Is it interesting? That's where I am not as sold. Liberator is a cute Voltron option where all you need to do is cast progressively bigger and bigger spells. So I do quite like that line of text. You don't need to do much else than protect it, now and again, to achieve a blackjack on one of your opponents. I'm not a big fan of colorless commander decks personally, and the nightmare-inducing image of Urza's face slapped on a winged boat isn't going to change that anytime soon. Number 20, the Archimandrite. Alright, I am fully prepared to answer why the Archimandrite is so low on my personal list. And the reason for me is quite simple. It's just another best option commander. If you're looking for a commander to helm your advisors, artificers, and or monk tribal, this is going to be your best option, likely for the foreseeable future. it's going to push all of the other commanders that might be a little bit more interesting to the specific strategy you're going for out of the way, because this is just so much more powerful than those other options. And to some of you, that might be unfair. The card itself is pretty cool, and despite my personal ranking of it, I do expect it to see much more play than some of the cards ahead of it on this list. Number 19, Mishra, Eminent One. This flavor of Mishra can copy artifacts and make temporary creature tokens of them. Right? That's pretty cool. A good chunk of the deck should be value artifacts, especially ones that give you something coming and going, with your choice of mean end of the battlefield triggers mixed in. Mishra's stealing is high if no one is able to interact, but when he's not on the battlefield or just sticks around for a short time, it's going to be hard to create a big advantage with your commander. Spoiler alert, there's another Grixis legend in Mishra's deck that I like better than Mishra himself. Number 18, Urza, Powerstone Prodigy. Young Urza's pretty great as far as uncommon legends go, and really not that bad as far as regular legends go. He has built-in card advantage to create Power Stones when you discard an artifact. It's very easy to get quick discards during other players' turns, which can of course fuel more Power Stone making down the line. I normally hate the once-a-turn restrictions, but in this case, it would be trivially easy to make 3 to 5 Power Stones a turn, which only serve to make more and more as the game progresses, so I get it. Urza is a great card advantage engine, and a very, very good commander for a peasant restriction. Number 17, Mishra, claimed by Gix. This version of Mishra and his pet dragon sure are aggressive, but honestly, they're kind of a one-trick pony. Now, that trick is a 9/9 trigger-happy monstrosity, but it's still entirely focused on combat. Things that help copy triggers or give you extra shots at combat are where you want to look in building this version of Mishra, but it's not like we're really breaking any new ground in gameplay. The bad news is, if Mishra's post-meld form gets hit with an exile spell, you can kiss your future meld dreams goodbye, because that card will not be available to you for the rest of the game. The meld fantasy is going to get some people to try Mishra out, and as much as I like a brutal horde chief, I won't be counted among them. Number 16, Titania, Voice of Gaea. Of the 3 meld legends in Brothers War, Titania is the easiest to activate. She costs 3 and a single color, just needs 1 land to meld with, and only asks that you have 4 other lands in your graveyard. Of course, green is uniquely suited to help you find that 1 land with an embarrassment of commander staples. Your reward for the almost too easy task is a massive red zone destroying avatar, which provides you with an equally massive land ramp from your graveyard. Fortunately, any piece removal will do. And just like all the legendary melders, you better hope it doesn't get hit with an exile spell, because that extra little combo piece is never coming back. Also, play Rift Sweeper. Like, just in general, but definitely for sure here. Number 15, Harbin, Vanguard Aviator. Harbin's stats are crazy pushed, and the aggression is reflected in his text box as well. Blue isn't known for Soldier Tribal, well, before Brothers War anyway, but white has plenty to go around. Harbin is a tribal leader only, but might be the best soldier commander. And I'm sure you'll notice that there's another soldier-based commander in Brothers War that I haven't yet discussed that could be more powerful, but does that make it a better soldier tribal commander? No, I actually think Harbin is much better. In addition to providing a very real and very aggressive attack trigger, Harbin brings a bunch of blue tribal sledgehammers to make up for the lack of inherent card advantage found in mono white. Number 14, Hurkyle, Master Wizard. I like that Hurkyle triggers on the end step, and is pretty unassuming card in the command zone as well. This serves her well to just stick on the battlefield and slowly accrue you advantage over the course of the game. She's not flashy, but picking up a couple of free cards a turn is important to fuel your following turns, especially when you focused on 2 specific card types. This is where I think the magic of Hurkyle lies, as you can really take her deck building in any direction. You want to focus on instants and artifacts, sorceries and creatures, enchantments and, I don't know, tribal. That's probably not a good idea. But the point is, you can pick any 2 card types or more, but I think 2 is really the right way to go to make Hurkyle really interesting. It's a bit of a deck building balancing act to make her excel, but she doesn't need to stick around many turns to prove her worth. Number 13, Titania, Nature's Voice. A very cool callback to the Commander 2014 version, this Titania gives you elementals on the front end when a forest enters the battlefield under your control instead of a land going to your graveyard. Titania Nature's Force, this version, also is a 6/6, which means that she can rumble into the red zone with her elemental army on a regular basis. Honestly, this card is very straightforward, which lowers it in my rankings despite its clear power. Play forest, sacrifice them, play them for your graveyard, etc., etc., etc. Personally, I would want to get a Titania double-up Marvel team-up going and then slap a Concordant Crossroads down to smack the entire table with an army of 5/3 elementals, but hey, maybe that's just me. Number 12, Tawnos the Toymaker. This Simic Tawnos feels like the spiritual successor to Volo from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, but instead of bringing the whole zoo, he wants to teach you about the birds and the beasts, which is similar to teaching you about the birds and the bees, just with more mauling and pecking. Or not, no judgment. Making tokens of creatures is powerful, and Tawnos has a decent body for 5 mana to stand up to some scrounging around on the battlefield with him. One of my favorite things about Tawnos is while you need to untap with him, or have a lot of mana at your disposal, blue and green give you the best tools to dodge spot removal. And once he gets going, there's going to be plenty of bigger targets than Tawnos himself. Simic is always good, but at least Tawnos is interestingly good. Number 11, Urza, Lord Protector. Cost reducers in the command zone are always much better than they appear. In a format where mana is more scarce than the cards you need to use it effectively, being able to hit the ground running with playing a ramp or control game is going to make this version of Urza quite annoying. That's not even counting the reason you're playing him in the first place. Once you have the necessary artifact in play, the most powerful planeswalker not named Tybalt the Fiend-Blooded awaits you on a throne of card advantage, mana advantage, board advantage, and plot armor. If you can ensure Urza Planeswalker sticks on the battlefield for more than a turn, the entire game is certain to warp around his presence. The good news is that sometimes Planeswalkers can be a bit squishy in multiplayer games, so you'll have to do some legwork to pull off the dream. Number 10, Myrel, Shield of Argive. For some of you, Myrel might seem misplaced on this list. I'm not doubting Myrel's power, as stopping your opponents dead in their tracks from casting spells or activating abilities on your turn with your commander or either of their spell-stopping cronies is going to allow you to freely operate in combat or maybe in some sort of mono-white combo deck. The issue for me is Myrel interesting? I know the fun part of this card is making soldiers, air quotes around fun, but I have a feeling Myrel is going to be used for the evil of the spell stopping rather than the good of making soldiers. But the thing is, it's not difficult to make soldier tokens. In fact, they might be the easiest creature token to make. So, for me, Myrel's power is there, but I just feel like I've kind of seen it all before. Number 9, Urza, Prince of Kroog. This version of Urza is pretty great, with 2 abilities that provide some interesting deck-building angles to aim for. Both can be straightforward but powerful, and provide some reusable high-mana ways to increase your artifact army, which of course leads to creating board states where you can activate that bottom ability as much as possible. I think that's really where the power lies in this card, despite +2/+2 being nothing to take lightly. I'd want to pack my deck with mana rocks and power stones of all kind. Urza himself will help you make the army. Even better if they find their way to having haste. Number 8, Drafna, founder of Lat-Nam. Drafna has immense upside, provided you have the artifact mana to play his game. Copying permanent spells on the stack can get pretty crazy, and honestly, he'd be almost as good if that was his only ability. One of the big reasons I like Drafna is that once you start to introduce some of the cost reducers for abilities, you can take the deck in whatever direction you want. But that isn't his only ability. Once you run out of gas from your hand, you just pay 2 mana, or maybe less, to bounce your own permanents to start the value train over again. Cheap artifacts with cast, enter the battlefield, and leave the battlefield triggers that move you forward with mana are certainly great places to start. He's very fragile and does need to untap, but I like his potential doing things that a blue artifact deck already wants to do. Number 7, Farid, Enterprising Salvager. I love random game objects, love them. And Farid introduces perhaps the most capital G, capital O game object to ever exist in Magic. A scrap token. It's literally just an artifact token with no text. I'm not even being sarcastic right now, I actually love it. The rest of Farid tells you what you want to do with those scraps, and that's sacrificing them for value, baby. You need some real cardboard to hit the graveyard to keep moving, but that's a wildly easy deck building requirement to fulfill. Note that Farid doesn't say 1 or more, so if 6 non-token artifacts hit the bin, that's 6 delicious pieces of scrap metal hanging around to provide an assortment of incremental advantage over the rest of the game. Number 6, Mishra, Tamer of Mokfala. This is my favorite version of Mishra. Give everything you have on the battlefield. That brutal ward ability is no joke. Just on its face, there are some cool interactions to force your opponent's hand before we get to the second part of the card. Admittedly, that might not be the most fun thing for your opponent, but it's certainly in the flavor of the character. While normally Unearth is a final option to squeeze some extra juice out of your creatures, or provide an uncounterable way for them to hit the battlefield, Mishra gives Unearth to non-creatures for the first time ever. And surely there's no way to abuse that, right? Well, this is where Mishra will shine, and with Brothers War and other upcoming sets featuring artifacts heavily, Mishra will quickly get new tools over the next several months. Number 5, Queen Kayla Bin-Kroog. The Queen has a lot of words on the card, and reading deeper reveals not only a crazy value engine, but an even more crazy deck building puzzle. Discard synergies are pretty clear, as are finding ways to get value out of the cards you don't get to return from Kayla's ability. I don't have enough time in this video to get into the specifics of how to build the best Queen Kayla Bin-Kroog deck, but I will show you the best 1, 2, and 3 for a Kayla deck. Believe me when I tell you, putting cards on the battlefield for free, even with a fragile commander that needs to untap, and even when they cost 3 or less, is still wildly powerful. Number 4, Ashnod the Uncaring. Whenever you see a 5-mana creature with unimpressive stats, you know something special is happening in the text box, and this version of Ashnod delivers. Notably, Ashnod's ability is a whenever, and is not restricted by any certain phase of the game, only during your turn, once a turn, or anything else like that. So the sky is the limit for copying sacrifice shenanigans. Cards that have powerful sacrifice effects are not that rare, so the effort it takes for Ashnod to do some game-breaking effects is minimal. Notably, Ashnod wisely doesn't copy mana abilities, but we can cheat a bit by looking for abilities that make treasure tokens instead. Ashnod has the ability to come down to an already set up board and just wreak havoc with very little your opponents can do in response. So just remember that you're best to do your sacrificing ability first, directly after she's cast. Number 3, Tokasia, Digsite Mentor. Tokasia is one of those cards that get better every time you read her. The ability to play multiple different angles in deck building is a huge plus, and giving all of your creatures Vigilance and Surveil, including her, is much, much more powerful than it looks. And that's before we even get to the main course. What happens with all those artifacts you surveilled? Well, for the actually low, low price of 8 mana, you get a ton of them back from your graveyard. Adding ways to turn your creatures into mana-focused resources once Tawnos is in the graveyard will make it tough for your opponents to interact with it. I'm just scratching the surface with Tawnos here, and I think there is much more to uncover with some clever deck building. Number 2, Gix Yawgmoth Praetor. Gix is the mono black Edric my heart never knew it wanted, but my soul always knew that it needed. Everything on Gix is powerful. Built-in near unlimited card advantage, something to do with all those cards you've been drawing, his ability to play politics by just existing, and playing into multiple of Black's strengths are all present on a card stuffed into a neat little 3-mana package nestled away safely in your command zone. The way to really push Gix to the limit is finding ways to move all of those new resources from one zone to another very quickly in an effort to keep the value engine humming. I've been waiting 25 years for Gix, so I'm happy to see that he is the real deal. Number 1, Urza Chief Artificer. And it's only appropriate that in the Brothers War expansion, and Urza claims the top spot. The face commander for one of the 2 Brothers Wars commander decks is my favorite of the 4 Urzas and of all of the legendary creatures in this set. Having a built-in cost reducer like Affinity for artifact creatures means Urza will be on the battlefield more often because Affinity is just a straight-up busted keyword. Deck building is straightforward in a sense. You really just want to be playing artifact creatures and cards that make them, but beyond that, the direction you take the deck is actually up to you. There are a ton of cards that make a number of artifact creatures, but the Game Buster cards will be the ones that let you turn all of your creatures into artifact-loving constructs. Urza Chief Artificer might be my favorite Esper commander of all time. Yeah, I think he's that good. That is it. Every single legendary creatures in Brothers War ranked from 30 to 1. And I have no doubt that I did an exceptional job and you have no disagreements for where I placed anything on the list. But in the rare chance that you do, let me know in the comments exactly where you feel like I went wrong. And I want to hear everyone's top 5 legendary creatures in Brothers War, because there's so many different ways to build these decks, and maybe there's something that I'm just not thinking of. Anyway, if you want to see more Commander content coming your way, make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the little bell on the way out, so you get the notifications, as well as like the video. Any of that stuff really helps. Thank you all so much, and we'll catch you next time.